That was in the last hour, so that's not going to happen now. So I'm only doing, so you ask me personal questions, I'm not going to answer them. They're all the questions, guys, if you have any questions, it's got to pertain to the topic in the study group as well. Oh, you know what? I don't even have this. There we go. I was already live here, and I was like, oh, shoot. I was like, I don't even have this set up right. There we go. Yeah, so, perfect. So we are doing Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsh. And this one, we are going to do a little bit of a shorter session today just because, again, I was running behind today. But I'm basically reading the book and then I'm commenting on some of the aspects of the book. And feel free to ask me questions about the different things that we discussed from the book. Personal questions or personal readings, I'm not doing those, guys. So for those of you who are tuning in wanting a reading, not going to happen. So this is by Neale Donald Walsh, and I'm still on book 1. We're in page 90, what is it, 92? Yeah, 92, 93, around there. And it's a conversation between Neale Donald Walsh and God. And basically, Neale got tired, he was frustrated, and so he just started to express himself and write down all of his frustrations and life issues, etc. And it became this conversation between he and God. So that's what the book is about. And so it's basically this back and forth between him and God. He's asking God questions. God is responding back and giving him answers. So I'm going to read both parts. When I'm talking as Neale, I will say Neale, and then I'll read his part. When I'm talking as God, I will say God, and then I'll read that part. And then I'll stop at some point, and then I'll look at what you guys are asking about, and then we'll go over some of that material as well. Okay. All right. So where are we here? Okay, got it. So page 93. You have said that what you resist persists, and what you look at disappears. Can you explain that? That was by Neale, sorry. So again, you have said that what you resist persists and what you look at disappears. Can you explain that? And what he's talking about is he's talking about law of attraction. For those of you who are not aware or up to speed with law of attraction, the idea with law of attraction is that what you put your attention on, whether through thoughts, emotions, or intent or action, and you're passionate about, basically you begin to materialize, or that starts to come into manifestation. But it doesn't just work with the things you want, it actually works with the things you don't want as well. So if you are trying to push something out of your life, or you're trying to escape or get away from something or run away from something in your life, you're actually pushing it you're going to be pulling it closer to yourself. You're going to be attracting more of it. So you're not going to be doing what you want to do, which is pushes it away. You're actually going to bring more of it into your life. And that's what he's talking about when he says, you have said, Neale, you have said what you resist persists and what you look at disappears. Can you explain that? God, you cannot resist something to which you grant no reality. The act of resisting a thing is the act of granting it life. When you resist an energy, you place it there. The more you resist, the more you make it real, whatever it is you're resisting. What you open your eyes and look at disappears. That is, it ceases to hold its illusory form. If you look at something, truly look at it, you will see right through it, and right through it holds for you, leaving nothing but ultimate reality in your sight. In the face of ultimate reality, your puny illusion has no power. It cannot long hold you in its weakening grip. You see the truth of it, and the truth sets you free. Neale, but what if you don't want the thing you are looking at to disappear? God, you should always want it to. There is nothing in your reality to hold on to. Yet if you do choose the illusion of your life over ultimate reality, you may simply recreate it, just as you created it to begin with. In this way, you may have in your life what you choose to have and eliminate from your life what you no longer wish to experience. Yet, never resist anything. If you think that by your resistance you will eliminate it, think again. You only plant it more firmly in place. Have I not told you all thought is creative? Neale, even a thought that says I don't want something. God, if you don't want it, why think about it? Don't give it a second thought. Yet, if you must think about it, that is, if you cannot not think about it, then do not resist. Rather, look at whatever it is directly, accept the reality as your creation, then choose to keep it or not as you wish. Neil, what would dictate that choice? God, who and what you think you are, and who and what you choose to be. This dictates all choice. I'm having like the hardest time reading today. This dictates all choice. Every choice you have made in your life and ever will make. Neil, and so the life of a renunciate is an incorrect path? God, that is not a truth. The word renunciate holds such wrongful meaning. In truth, you cannot renounce anything because what you resist persists. The true renunciate does not renounce, but simply chooses differently. This is an act of moving towards something, not away from something. You cannot move away from something because it will chase you all over hell and back. Therefore, resist not temptation, but simply turn from it. Turn toward me and away from anything unlike me. Yet know this, there is no such thing as an incorrect path, for on this journey you cannot not get where you are going. It is simply a matter of speed, merely a question of when you will get there. Yet even that is an illusion. For there is no when, neither is there a before or after. There is only now, an eternal moment of always in which you are experiencing yourself. Neil. Then what is the point? If there is no way not to get there, what is the point of life? Why should we worry at all about anything we do? God, well, of course you shouldn't, but you would do well to be observant. Simply notice who and what you are being, doing, and having, and see whether it serves you. The point of life is not to get anywhere. It is to notice that you are and have always been already there, always and forever in the moment of pure creation. The point of life is therefore to create who and what you are, and then to experience that. And so now we're on chapter 6. So before we go into chapter 6, let me talk about this for a second because there are some points he was making here. So sometimes people have asked me, like, what about pain? Or like, how do we ignore pain? Or how do we like stop focusing on pain? And what I suggest is to focus on an activity that you can become so consumed with that you don't pay as much attention to your pain. Because in the process of this, two things may happen. You may diminish the effect of the thing that is causing you to feel pain and suffering. And also you are giving yourself something else to focus on. So your mind is not spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, focusing on the sustenance or the experience of the pain you have. That doesn't mean that the pain's going to magically go away, but it will diminish and it will be reduced because you're no longer fixated or obsessed with the idea of it. And that's what is talked about here. So that's the pivot. If you're focused on something or obsessed with something, for example, weight. Before I lost weight, or because I lost a significant amount of weight twice in my life, every single time I was heavier, my weight and my body, that was an obsession. Because if you wake up thinking about it, if you go to sleep thinking about it, if you think about it throughout the day, if you keep comparing yourself to everybody else, you're basically telling your body that you are heavy and that you have weight and that you're not happy with your body and that something's wrong with your body. So your body's going to start to react to that and it's going to start to take its cue from you. And so if you're trying to lose weight, don't focus on losing weight. Focus on becoming more active and get involved in activities that you may actually enjoy. I don't like exercise, quite frankly. I hate exercise, but I like walking and I can walk. Walking is not a problem for me. And I honestly believe that we're designed to walk anyways. But for me, when I am trying to focus on being healthier, I don't focus on trying to lose weight. I try to focus on doing things that I know are going to lead to me losing weight and getting healthier. So I will include more walking time, or I'll do more emphasis on like eating the foods that I know are healthy for me or good for me. And so I focus more on what I can do that is better for me instead of focusing on something that's going to help me lose weight. If you focus on something that's helping you lose weight, all you're going to do is obsess about losing weight. And so you're going to be even more sensitive and you're actually going to be more focused on that. You're going to pour more energy into it as well. And you're also going to make it harder for your body to let go of some of that extra weight as well. So for me, If I want to lose weight, I don't focus on losing weight. I just focus on walking or on eating more things that I know are going to be easier for me or healthier for me. So that's what I do, and that works for me. That actually works really well for me. That's one example that I'm using there. Chapter 6, what of suffering? Is suffering the way and the path to God? This is Neil, sorry. And what of suffering? Is suffering the way and the path to God? Some say it is the only way. God, I am not pleased by suffering, and whoever says I am does not know me. Suffering is an unnecessary aspect of the human experience. It is not only unnecessary, it is unwise, uncomfortable, and hazardous to your health. Neil, then why is there so much suffering? Why don't you, if you are God, put an end to it if you dislike it so much? God, I have put an end to it. You simply refuse to use the tools I have given you with which to realize that. You see, suffering has nothing to do with events, but with one's reaction to them. What's happening is merely what's happening. How you feel about it is another matter. I have given you the tools with which to respond and react to events in a way which reduces, in fact, eliminates pain, but you have not used them. Let me give you an example of this. And I'll actually use the last hour with all the readings as an example because, so even though there was like 2 or 3 people that I read in a row and they had a lot of no's to say, they were like, no, like they were like no's and etc. If I was attached to the experience of suffering, or if I was really good at suffering, then every single one of those no's would have immediately thrown me off or caused me to go into an internal state of retraction, meaning I would have pulled my energy back, because immediately what I would have done if I were hell-bent on punishing myself or on comparing myself to everybody else or on trying to make myself feel bad because the person didn't click or understand exactly what I was talking about, what I would have done is I would have immediately gone into my headspace and I would have been like, oh, I suck. I'm not very good at this, or I don't know how to do this very well, or everybody is seeing me and I look like a damn fool, or I would have gone into this whole mental spin with my mindset. But having done this, I know better because I have seen this over and over again, where whenever I do that, I never, ever try to take the no's as a personal thing, because I know from experience that people do not click until after it's done, like, and they understand. So I don't go into this negative mind space of something's wrong with me. I'm bad. I'm awful. I don't do this very well. I don't take myself though. I don't even allow myself to go there. I may spend like a second there on an off day, but I try not to let myself go there. And instead I'm like, nope, I'm going to pull myself back from the edge of what I'm trying to jump off of. And I'm going to know better, because I know from experience that that's not the way this works, and that I know that people are going to figure things out when I'm done with them. So immediately I just tell myself, that's okay. People have seen this. They're seeing you do this 2 times in a row, 3 times in a row. They're going to judge you. They're going to criticize you. They're going to tell you, I don't go there. And I didn't allow my mind to go there, because I'm like, no, I do this enough. Enough people see me do this that they know that there's something going on here. So I don't need to prove anything. This is going to be proven over and over and over again over time. And some of those people are going to end up coming back, posting in the comments, oh my God, I realized now what you were talking about. So I don't worry about it, but I go into a positive headspace and I give myself a different direction to go with it. All it does for me though, all it does is it forces me to say, okay, how could I have sensed that piece of information more specifically, or could I've interpret something else in a different way? And so instead of trying to punish myself or trying to get on myself, I instead use the experience to say, how could I have done it better? What could I have done better? What could I have done differently? And that's all I do. So that's the most that I'll allow myself when criticizing or judging myself, because it doesn't help me to go into this tailspin of like, okay, now let me compare myself to this person or to that person, etc. And so that's why I don't do that, because it's not going to serve anybody. And I mean, what is to be gained from that? What is to be gained from that? So that's an example of how I repivot and I don't allow myself to go into a dark space with something that isn't going the way that I would prefer. But it's still in my mind. I'm like, that's still valid. I'm sticking with what I'm saying. I'm sticking. And this is also something that has made, there's a lot of psychics and mediums out there who, especially mediums, when they're doing readings, for example, when I was saying, this is the name I'm getting, or I'm giving them the first part of a name, and they're like, oh yeah, this, my sister, this, I could have said, oh yes, and immediately embrace that, because I'm like, I would rather be seen as right than to stick to what I'm getting. And so there's a lot of mediums out there that they will actually just agree with what that person is saying just so that they look right. I'm like, I don't give a damn if I look right or wrong, because I know better. So I'm like, no, I know what I'm seeing, and it's not what they're telling me. And even though it's pretty close, that's not it. And I feel like that's not it, which is why I tell them, I could have easily owned that and said, yeah, that's it, and like run with it. But that's not going to help them figure out who the person is that I'm seeing or that I'm sensing. And I actually want to honor them in spirit, because if they are willing to come and talk to me, and they're willing to come and connect with me and share the information, I honor that. And I honor the fact that I'm even allowed to do this and that I'm able to do this. So for me, I'd rather honor the information and look completely wrong in front of people than to agree with someone because they gave me something that's pretty close or even similar, because I want to look right. This is not about me. And I think that's where I differ in a lot of instances. This work is not about me. Yeah, I like attention. Yeah, I'm an entertaining personality, but it's not about me at the end of the day. It's about what am I able to give people to verify and validate that their loved ones are there. And if I'm able to give them information, even if they can't validate it in the moment because they have to go ask a family member or they have to look it up, that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with that, because I would rather give them proof and evidence than to just spit something out and make it sound good for the camera. That to me doesn't matter. So it's more important. And I think when we figure out what our priorities are and what matters to us, then we can focus more on that and be very passionate and be very aggressive with our motion in that direction, or our path in that way. So for me, it's all about the work. So if you care about something, focus on the things you care about. If you're trying to ignore or avoid something, don't sit there thinking and then obsessing about it. Just focus on the thing that matters more to you. And for me, it matters more to just keep going and keep sharing what is coming through and what I am sensing, not in trying to be right or trying to look good in front of a camera. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what other people think when they are seeing me think. What matters is that the work is being done, and that it's being done authentically, and that there is accuracy in it. And so that's what they'll figure out when they go check some of those details. But that's another example of that. And I kind of wanted to share that with y'all. So for those of you who are trying to become mediums, or trying to become psychic or develop yourselves, you can easily get shut down, because I know that feeling. I've experienced it many a times, especially in the beginning stages of this work for myself. I've seen other psychics go through it as well, and it's not fun watching another psychic. There's a film on Netflix called The Afterlife that just came out as like a documentary. And in one of the episodes, this person is getting a reading by this guy who is at a center, and he's supposed to be like one of the best of the best at that center. But when he starts doing the reading, there's a no. One thing came up, it was a no. After that, you can see him immediately go straight down, and you can see him starting to self-sabotage. And he's listening to the voice in his head that's saying, you suck, you're doing this on camera, this is going to be on Netflix, you're such an idiot, you're going to be completely... and so you could see that happening in the moment when he's doing the reading. And so he let his self-saboteur take over, and he went down that spiral. And we do that with a lot of other things. We do that with our weight. We do that with our relationships, and we compare ourselves to, well, all my friends are married and they're all settled down and I'm still single. Or all my friends are having kids and I haven't had a baby yet. My life is still a mess. Like, we do that. We compare ourselves and we listen to that self-saboteur, and we send ourselves into a spiral, and we get into our head, and it will break us. We will be our own self-saboteur. So that's why you have to really, really know who you are, know the value of your work, and understand what you're bringing to the table, even if the people who are in the moment witnessing it or are seeing you do it don't agree, or they may make a snap judgment, because at the end of the day, their opinion doesn't matter. The person that you're helping or trying to give information to, that's who matters at the end of the day, and trying to convey that information the way it's coming across, not the way that the person may want to hear or what they're willing to agree with. That is the difference between a medium and someone who has established themselves in that and they stick to it, versus someone who's just like going along with it and just fishing for information. And that's something that myself personally, like, I'm so prepared to like respond to that, because that's one of the things that skeptics will come back and say, like, oh, like, A medium, all they do is they just ask you a yes or no question, or they'll throw something out there. And if you respond back and give them something, even if it's not correct, they're going to run with it because they're wanting to look good or be right. And they're going to make it seem like they got all the pieces. I'm like, I don't care about getting everything right. I just want to get exactly what I'm getting in the way it's coming across. That's what I'm more focused on. So I'm not going to agree with everything that a person tells me to try to make it fit, because it's not about making it fit. It's about the collective consciousness. God, precisely, exactly. Neil, there are those who say the world is going to hell in a handbasket, our ecology is dying, our planet is in for a major geophysical disaster, earthquakes, volcanoes, maybe even a tilting of the earth on its axis, and there are others who say collective consciousness can change all that we can save the earth with our thoughts. God, thoughts put into action. If enough people everywhere believe something must be done to help the environment, you will save the earth. But you must work fast. So much damage has already been done for so long. This will take a major attitudinal shift. Neil, you mean if we don't, we will see the earth and its inhabitants destroyed? God, I have made the laws of the physical universe clear enough for anyone to understand. These are laws, of course. There are laws, of course, and effect, which have been sufficiently outlined to your scientists, physicists, and through them to your world leaders. These laws don't need to be outlined once more here. Neil, getting back to suffering, where did we ever get the idea that suffering was good, that the saintly suffer in silence? God, the saintly do suffer in silence, but that does not mean suffering is good. The students in the School of Mastery suffer in silence because they understand that suffering is not the way of God, but rather a sure sign that there is something to learn of the way of God, still something to remember. The true master does not suffer in silence at all, but only appears to be suffering without complaint. The reason that the true master does not complain is that the true master is not suffering, but simply experiencing a set of circumstances that you would call unsufferable. A practicing master does not speak of suffering simply because a master practicing clearly understands the power of the word, and so chooses to simply not say a word about it. We make real that to which we pay attention. The master knows this. The master places himself at choice with regard to that which she chooses to make real. You have all done this from time to time. There is not a one among you who has not made a headache disappear or a visit to the dentist less painful through your decision about it. A master simply makes the same decision about larger things. Neil, but why have suffering at all? Why have even the possibility of suffering? God, you cannot know and become that which you are in the absence of that which you are not, as I have already explained to you. Neil, I still don't understand how we ever got the idea that suffering was good. God, you are wise to be insistent in questioning that. The original wisdom surrounding suffering in silence has become so perverted that now many believe, and several religions actually teach, that suffering is good, that joy is bad. Therefore, you have decided that if someone has cancer but keeps it to himself, he is a saint, whereas if someone has, to pick a dynamite topic, robust sexuality, and celebrates it openly, she is a sinner. Neil, boy, you did pick a dynamite topic, and you cleverly changed the pronoun to from male to female to make a point. God, it was to show you your prejudices. You don't like to think of a woman having robust sexuality, much less celebrating it openly. You would rather see a man dying without a whimper on the battlefield than a woman making love with a whimper in the street. Neil, wouldn't you? God, I have no judgment one way or the other, but you have all sorts of them, and I suggest that it is your judgments which keep you from joy. And this is even God speaking, and not my overactive imagination. God, you've asked that before. My answer is the same. What difference does it make? Even if everything I've said is wrong, can you think of a better way to live? Neil, no. God, then wrong is right and right is wrong. Yet I tell you this to help you out of your dilemma. Believe nothing I say, simply live it, experience it. Then live whatever other paradigm you want to construct. Afterward, look to your experience to find truth. One day, if you have a great deal of courage, you will experience a world where making love is considered better than making war. On that day, you will rejoice. And I'll stop there because that's the end of that chapter. So that's a short chapter. All right, guys, and let me look at your questions to see what you guys have to say about that. And sexuality is definitely a taboo topic for a lot of people. The idea, like, people don't realize how much of an issue we make sex. And it really isn't that big a deal. It's just a biological function of pleasure and experience. So when people like myself talk about sex or masturbation or any topic that has to do with sexuality, they get very uncomfortable if they have been conditioned by their culture or by their religious beliefs or faiths that sex is evil or sex is wrong. So we exist as human beings in physical form, and we're designed to have a sexual experience and experience pleasure from that sexual experience. And people think it's bad. So are they saying that God is bad because he created us to enjoy sex? Or are they saying that it's bad because it wasn't designed to be pleasurable? It was just designed to give you pleasure so that you would do it for procreation, but that's all sex is about, procreation, right? So, and that comes from like old world mindsets and old world mentalities. I'll tell you a story about sex, okay? Because I want to use my experience as an example, and people are going to say, what, Ferny? Like, oh my God, like you're talking about something and it's really taboo. I'm like, get over it. It's just sex. It's not that big a deal. It's like wiping your ass. We all have to take a shit on a regular basis. Hopefully those of you do it regularly, daily, but all of us have to wipe our asses at the end of the day. So we're not above it. So if you're walking around thinking like, I'm above it and I don't talk about that thing, it's very taboo, etc., you're basically like trying to make yourself out to be better than everybody else, but you're still made just like everybody else. And so you're trying to buy into a theory or an idea that you were probably conditioned into. For me, sex and language are the same things. And I think this last year has been a big teaching tool and a big opportunity to experience myself in a very unfiltered way. That's the reason why I called my podcast Ferny Unfiltered, because I was trying to get more comfortable with being a much more looser, much more non-judgmental, much more loving, compassionate, authentic version of myself. And the only way for me to be an authentic version of myself is to actually be authentic. And so for me, when I am cursing or I am like using this word or that word, or I say the word fuck, F-U-C-K, fuck, in a very either sexual way or in a very passionate way, some people will feel very uncomfortable with that. And that's okay. I'm not for them. I'm not for them because I am who I am. But it's just a word. It's just a word of expression. All words are expressive forms of being. That's all they are. But I remember last year, like with everything that was going on, the craziness that was going on, there was someone on with COVID. This was COVID related, and there was someone that worked at the hospital. And when COVID was starting to spike, when the first major spike that happened, they were working in the hospital and they were just completely like overwhelmed, and it was so hard for them. And so they went online on Reddit and they were just sharing their experience and what they were going through and experiencing in the hospital. And they cursed a lot because for them it was a very, very intense experience, and for them, using the word fuck or this or that was the best way that they could express themselves. So, but it was very educational. Like you could read it and be like, oh my God, like I didn't realize that was happening. So I shared that article or shared that post with some people that I know. And when I shared the post, one of them came back and was like, I don't think I want to put any credibility into that article because they used the word fuck or they used a lot of cursing language in the writing. And immediately I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, those are words. Like, if you're going to base, like, your belief in something because of the way someone expressed it. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're going to dismiss this person's expression and their opinions and their experience that could actually help you and prepare you for. You're going to dismiss that just because they used a few curse words and they were very colorful in their language. Like, what the hell is that about? And that's the thing. A lot of people get caught up in those minutia, those things that don't really matter at the end of the day, and it doesn't really do much to help a person evolve or to help them connect with others in that way. So that was just, the way that person was expressing themselves, because it was a very traumatic and painful experience for them to go through. But another thing that I'll talk about, and now let me talk about sex for a second, because I'm going to get back to sex, because people really have problems or trouble thinking of spiritual teachers as sexual beings. We are sexual beings. We enjoy sex. We love sex. Sex is just a physical pleasure. That's all it is. And so when we talk about sex, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I'm gonna tell you a story which is going to include a sexual experience for me, and I'm probably going to be a little graphic. So just FYI, for those of you who don't want to hear it, you can jump off or bounce off. It's perfectly okay. But my very first psychic experience, and I haven't shared this publicly, so I'll share it now because now's the best opportunity since we were talking about sex. My very first psychic experience, and for those of you who don't know about my first psychic experience, I talk about a fire that I experienced in my home growing up. And what ended up happening was that my mother used to work on the weekends. And this was back when I was a teenager. And I was a teenager, so I was literally just stepping into I was like right out of puberty. This was like shortly after puberty. And when men are going through puberty, I don't know the experience for females because I don't remember or know how that is for females, but for men or for boys who are advancing sexually, when boys are going through puberty, they end up with raging hormones, and they start to discover themselves and explore themselves sexually. And the way that they do that is through masturbation. That's what happens with teenage boys. They tend to masturbate a whole lot. People don't like to think of them that way, but that's what happens, right? So my mom was at work, and I used to go and cook for myself in the kitchen. And so one day when I was doing that, I had a vision or a memory pop in my mind, but it wasn't a memory that had happened yet. It was something that just showed up in my brain. But visual was of me in the kitchen. The stove was on fire. The cabinets were on fire. The entire kitchen was black. And it was like, it was a fire in the kitchen. And in my mind, I heard a voice. And now I know it was my guide's voice. But at the time, I didn't know whose voice it was. But it sounded just like my voice, just like my internal thinking voice. And the voice was like, hey, what would you do if this happened? What would you do to work to figure this out with the kitchen and with the fire? Like, how would you deal with this? And I was like, I don't know. And I was like trying to figure out what I would do. And so I came up with a plan of action. And my plan of action was, okay, if there's a fire in the kitchen, there's probably smoke. I took that class in elementary school on how you roll on the ground or you're supposed to be under the smoke. So I was like, okay, well, if there's gonna be smoke here, as soon as I get into the kitchen, I need to hold my breath, take a breath, because I'm going to need air. As soon as I hold my breath, I need to walk straight ahead, even if I can't see it, straight ahead until I bump into the sink, the kitchen sink. We had a little hose, those little hoses that you can pull out and spray. We had a hose at the sink, and I thought, okay, I can pull out the hose, I can point it towards the fire, I can put out the fire, and then I can go out the back door, which is right there in the kitchen. And that was actually the only way in and out of the kitchen that we had. So that was my plan. And so I practiced and rehearsed that plan for 1 week. And then a week later, I made breakfast for myself again. And the stove that we had was a hand-me-down, and it actually had some issues or some defects. And you would have to basically play or wiggle the knob, put your hand over it to be able to distinguish whether there was heat coming from the coils or not. And if there was no heat coming from it, it was off. So that's how we turned off our stove, right? And whenever we would cook in the kitchen, the fire alarm would always turn on just because someone thought it was a bright idea to put a fire alarm above the stove in the kitchen. But that's what they did. So every time we cooked, the fire alarm would go off because it was always smoking, and there was no vent to vent the air. It would just happen in the kitchen or be in the kitchen. Actually, that's why we opened the door, because the door would let the fumes out or whatever. So this day I went in the kitchen, made my breakfast, I moved the pan over, and then I was checking to see if the stove was off. I checked, the stove was off. It's okay, I'm gonna go to my room and I'm gonna start eating. I was in my room eating, all of a sudden, beep, 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 beep. You're hearing the alarm. It was already ringing before I left the kitchen. So it's not like I was even fazed by it ringing. Because when I got to my room, it was still ringing. So it didn't just start randomly ringing. It was already ringing. But I was sitting in my room trying to eat, and all I could concentrate on, or all I could think of, was the damn alarm. And I'm like, oh my God, like this thing needs to go off already. It's so annoying. But I thought that way every single time about the alarm. But as I was thinking that, the voice popped back in my head and said, Ferny, go to the kitchen. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. And then the voice came back again and was like, Ferny, go to the kitchen. Like, you need to go to the kitchen. And I was like, I don't want to get up. I want to finish watching my Saturday morning cartoons, and I want to eat my food, my pancakes. And the voice popped in again. And this time it was like very intent and like solid and like strong and firm. It's a very firm but wise voice. But it was my voice. But it was firm and strong. And it came through again. And it was like, Ferny, go to the kitchen. And I was like, Jesus. Okay, fine. I'll go to the kitchen. So I'm over here having a conversation with this voice in my head. I'm like, I'm going to go to the kitchen. I went to the kitchen. And sure enough, as I'm walking towards the kitchen entranceway, there's black, billowy smoke coming out of the kitchen. And I was like, and I could see the flames, the like light of the flames hitting the smoke. And I was like, oh my God. And so immediately, like, I freaked out and I ran up to the kitchen door. And sure enough, standing there was the exact scene I had seen 1 week before in my mind and my memory. And it was exactly the same, actually. That was why I freaked out so much, because it was so exact the way it was. And so I freaked out. And I was like, oh my God. So immediately I froze up, because I'm like, what do I do? Like, you sometimes when you're caught in the moment, you don't know what to do, or you don't know how to react. But I had spent all week practicing. So immediately as I was like, what do I do? The thought in my head was like, you've been practicing all week. You know exactly what to do. And I'm like, I know. I do. And so immediately, like, I held my breath, went up to the sink, bumped into it, pulled the hose out without seeing anything. All I could see was the flames. And then I started spraying out the fire, and the fire went out. And then that was it. That was the end of it. And then I went out the side door, and I caught my first breath of air, because there was no, like, I couldn't breathe. Had I started taking in that smoke, I probably would have died of inhalation. But the house that we lived in, I would have died if that wouldn't have happened, and if I wouldn't have been guided by them, because our house, we lived in the hood, and all of our house, the windows and the doors were all covered with like burglar bars. And the burglar bars in the windows were not, you couldn't open those. They were welded into the frame. The other door, the front door, we never used it. So we had lost the key over time, because we always went through that kitchen door. And that also had burglar bars over it. So you needed 2 keys, and we had lost, again, both those keys. So had I not been alerted or been able to figure this out, I probably would have either died of smoke inhalation, or I wouldn't have made it out of the kitchen before the whole thing went up in flames, or I would have been covered with burn scars. So it's because of that experience that I was able to kind of make it through. But after that, because I was in such shock, and I was like, oh my God. Here's where the sex part comes in. Because I was a teenager and I had just discovered the miracle of masturbation at that time. I was obsessed with masturbation. It was a daily practice. It was like prayer for me every day as a teenage kid, trying to release the intensity of the hormones that you're being like run over with. But for me, that was a regular experience that I had every single day. So after this happened, the first thing I started to think about as a Catholic at the time was, God is punishing me because I masturbated. And that's wrong, and that's a sin. And this was my punishment. I didn't even think about the psychic bit. I didn't even know what psychic was. I didn't think about the experience of being guided that whole. None of that was on my mind. I didn't even think that, for me, wasn't significant. What was significant was the complete experience of this happening when I had that vision, and then also it happening right after I had masturbated, right? I don't know why I said that when masturbated, but anyways, so for me, immediately that's where I went with it mentally. I was like, God is punishing me because I masturbated. And I'm thinking of like, boys, and that's not right, that's wrong. And again, I'm a teenage boy when this is happening. So after that, I went on a celibacy kick, and I did not masturbate for like 2 or 3 months until the hormones took over. And then that I was right back to my special pleasure. So that's the craziness that we have towards sexuality and like sexual experiences. It's just masturbation. It's not that serious. And so it really is just a sexual experience for people. Sex is just a sexual experience for people. When people are having children, women, their vaginas are like spread open and they're like giving birth. And it's not like they're worried that, most women are like, I'm in the middle of trying to create a life here. I don't give a damn who sees me at this point. I just want to get this thing out of me. So, people are not focused on those things. People are not focused on that. You know, I've had massages by people, and you know, when you get a full blown massage, body massage, you're naked underneath the sheet. Like in the beginning, I would always have my underwear on because I felt so uncomfortable being naked. Now I'm like, it's just like nudity. Who gives a damn? So for me, it's like a completely different change in my perception and my ideas about things, because going into a more spiritual mindset, sex is nothing more than just a physical experience. That's all it is. But it is an opportunity to bond with others. It's an opportunity to connect with others in a very intimate or close way. And sometimes for people, especially for males, if you don't have a partner, I don't know about females because I don't have the mindset of a female, but males use it as a way to cope with being alone. Sometimes, or they use it as a way to make themselves feel a connection to themselves, because sometimes they feel alone. And so for males, it can be a very different set of things all in all. But at the end of the day, it is still just a sexual experience. Now, I wonder if, you know, some of these, like this stupid kid that went and shot all those people, if he had like a sex addiction and he was trying to fight sex addiction, I think to myself, maybe had the church he was going to or the people he was raised by taught him differently, or taught him how it's not something to feel sinful about, or you're not evil because you have sexual thoughts. Maybe he wouldn't even, that even wouldn't be a thought in his head, though I don't feel like that has anything to do with it. I think it had more to do with his racism. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was very aroused by Asian women, and that's the reason why he targeted Asian women specifically. It's a racist issue and it's a sexual issue, but nonetheless, it all comes down to these issues. So, you know, I wonder how things would have progressed differently had he not been made to feel like, you know, he was evil or bad. And I understand that because I went through that experience when I was a teenager, and this whole thing. Now I see it in a completely different way. For me, it's a completely different experience, and I don't make a big deal about it. It's not a big deal. So, but that's just my perspective. So let me go through some of the questions here before I jump off of here to see what you guys are asking about the content or about the topic here. Unity's like, I want to see pictures of your cats on your Instagram, please. I do. I share like several of mama cats, not as often, not as much as I should. I should show more pictures, but yeah, I will try. Yeah. Let's see. So is our thought of creation a creation? No. The idea of a potential is a thought that is creation. The idea of a potentiality. So when I'm thinking like, I wonder, that's a creation right there. Immediately when I was like, I wonder about this, I'm creating and I'm participating with the process of creation with Source and with God. So that's a creation. Or I'm, you know, if I think about the possibility or like potentialities or whatever, that's all creative. Feeling something new is a creation because it produces something for you. So those are all creation. A thought about creation isn't necessarily a creation. It's something that's already been experienced in some way or another by everyone or by people. But a thought about creation and wonderment of creation, that's a creative thought because it automatically starts to produce and open up the opportunity to experience new forms and ways of understanding creation. Go back down here. The thing came up. There it goes. I was like, oh no, the thing came up. Let's see. Thank you, Scramaline. I noticed that about you, Ferny, and that's why you're the real deal. I appreciate that. I have no problem looking like a fool on camera because we're all fools. So we're literally, all of us living in this reality is like, to me, it's like, we're such fools to come down here, but I understand the method for it as well. So I know why we do it. Yes, it is. Honesty is a way. Honestly, it's easier to just be honest and just be blunt and direct with people. Do it the Gary Vee way, because I feel like he's a perfect model of like honesty and like directness. So for me, it's like the honesty is easier. Now honesty is different from what you choose to share versus how you choose to present yourself to the world. How you choose to present yourself to the world is you constructing a version of yourself that you think is palatable for others, or a version of yourself that you think people will accept. So when you present it or you put it forward, there's still a level of like, I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to disappoint anybody. I want everybody to be happy. I want to make everybody happy. Everybody's opinion matters. That's what is basically the basis of when you present a version of yourself to the world. But when you're just yourself, it is easy and it takes way less effort. And granted, you might end up like shooting yourself in the foot sometimes in the way that we're honest, because I know plenty of people in the media who they express themselves in an honest way, and then that comes back and bites them in the ass big time. I get it. I understand. But it's still the better deal. It's still the better route to go, is to just be honest and just be direct about things. And if you mess up or you say or you do something that is you were wrong for that, then just own it and just apologize. Like, it's easier just to own your mistake and apologize and say, well, I know better now. I'm going to try to work on that, or I'm going to work on that because I was wrong for saying that. That's the better approach than, I never said that. That never happened and you're wrong and you're trying to make me look like something. Like, that's not the reaction that it should be. So it's easier just to be honest and direct with people. Yeah, and Muñeca 4444. She says, the same exact thing happened to me before my husband died. I think she's talking about the vision or seeing something. I had multiple visions, but I didn't know they were real. I thought they were paranoia. There's two ways to approach this, because this is something that I've had to work on myself. I feel like choking. Let's take a step here because my throat's closing. So, whenever something's happening or coming, I notice that it comes across like a suggestion that is persistent. A suggestion that's persistent is like almost like, here, let me just leave this here. Maybe you'll pay attention to it. And that's like a suggestion that's persistent. And then it happens again, and then it happens again. So I've learned that when there's something like that, but then it comes up more than once and it starts to become like a reoccurring idea or thought, at that point, I have to say, okay, I don't want this to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because that means that I'm putting some energy into it and I'm reacting to it emotionally. I might actually produce this or manifest this. So I tell myself, is there anything that I can do to avoid that or to change that outcome if it happens? And so what I do is I try to come up with a plan for, if that does happen, how do I deal with it? How should I approach that? And then just thinking about a plan makes me feel better about it. And then that's it. And so whenever it comes up again, I think, okay, well, this is how I would approach it, or this is what I would do in that instance. And then it goes away, it settles. So if it happens, I'm prepared and I can deal with it, which is what happened last year with COVID, and how I had all of my supplies before the stores, before people started going crazy shopping. I had loads of supplies. I have a solar panel array that I bought. I have a deep freezer, all of it, because there was a suggestion from my psyche that kept dropping in, but it was more like a subtle suggestion. Hey. So I've learned that is usually them trying to prepare me for something, or something that I need to understand and then be prepared for in some way. If it becomes a obsessive thought with so much fear, if it just comes up out of nowhere and then it starts to become a reoccurring thing, I also will treat it the exact same way. But I bring myself down to, okay, can I actually change the outcome? If I can't, let me just prepare myself for this if this is a reality. And I approach it the exact same way. More times than not, the one that's like a subtle hint is the one that tends to happen most often. The one that's a paranoid obsession of fear can actually just become more of a fear-based mindset, where you're something has caused you to be fearful of that. Many times it's something that person has experienced in childhood. My sister, she has rejection issues, or she has abandonment issues, because all of the males in her life abandoned her in one way or another. Her father didn't stick around. My uncle passed away from cancer, but in her mind, in her psyche, it was abandonment or rejection some way. And so for her, this obsession with feeling like she has to control the males in her life so that they don't abandon her or leave, that's a fear-based mindset, because it's an everyday thing for her. But I can do this. Okay. All right, guys, I think I am done. Brian Weiss is great. I love Brian Weiss's books. He's really good. I love Brian Weiss. So actually, the last study group that we did was Many Lives, Many Masters, and that was earlier last year. So, I'm sorry. So, all right, guys, I love you all. I will be back next week. I will be back next week. So I will see you then, okay?